Another way to solve quadratic equation is by completing the squares. Okay, and that is our topic for today. But before I give you examples on how to use this method, let us review first how to factor perfect square trinomial. Okay, so when you say perfect square trinomial, perfect square trinomial, this is just a review because we've already discussed this when we were discussing about factoring. Okay, perfect square trinomial is when you have a trinomial. That means that you have three terms, okay, and both of the first and the last term are perfect square. An example of that is x squared. Let's say okay, let's say you have 10 squared plus x squared plus 10x plus 25. Let's see if this is a perfect square. The first term is a perfect square, so x squared is a perfect square, that is x times x, right? So you are multiplying a number or a variable by itself, so you multiply it twice, so therefore this is a perfect square. See, the exponent is 2. You will know if it is a perfect square if the exponent of the variable is an even number. Okay, so let's say x raised to 4, that's a perfect square. X raised to 6, those are perfect square. Okay, now 25 here, which is the last term, or your C, is also perfect square because we know that 25 is 5 times 5, or 5 square, so that's a perfect square. So if the first term and the last terms are perfect square, and the middle term here, you have also to check the middle term. It should be the product of the factors of the last term. So this is 5 plus 5 is equal to 10, which is correct with our middle term. So therefore this is a perfect square trinomial. So PST, or perfect square trinomial. Another example is x squared, okay, plus let's say 16x plus 64, right? So this is x times x is a perfect square, 64 is a perfect square because 64 is 8 times 8, or x squared, right? So this is a perfect square. Again, 8 plus 8 is equal to 16. Okay, another one is, so you have x squared minus let's say you have, alright, x squared minus 8x plus 16. So x squared again is a perfect square. 16 is 4 times 4, right? 4 times 4, or 4 squared. And 4 plus 4 is equal to 8, right? Since this is negative, that becomes negative times negative, still gives you a positive answer, which is positive 16, right? And negative 4 is negative 8. Alright, let me correct this one. Okay, so that is a perfect square trinomial. So how do we factor perfect square trinomial? When we are factoring perfect square trinomial, we just factor. Just make sure that it's a perfect square trinomial. And then when you are already sure that it is a perfect square trinomial, all you have to do is to factor the first term and the last term. Okay, so it will always give you two binomials. So x squared is x times x. Factors of 25 is 5 times 5. Since the middle term is positive, this is also positive. These are also positive. Or you can rewrite this as x plus 5 square, right? Another one. So x squared is x times x. 64 is 8 times 8. And your middle term here is positive, so both will be positive. Or you can write this as x plus 8 square. Okay, let's have the next one. X squared minus 8x plus 16. It's a perfect square trinomial. So x squared is x times x. and 16 is 4 times 4. Your middle term is negative, so they will be both negative. Square. Right? Let's have another one. Let's say you have x squared. Let's say, right, so that will be x squared is x times x. 81 is 9 times 9, right? And 9 plus 9 is 18. Since this is negative, they will be both negative, or x minus 9 squared. So that is a perfect square trinomial. So we are going to apply how to factor perfect square trinomial in solving quadratic equation by completing the square. Right, so let's move on. Now, to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, you have to follow steps to do that. And why are we using completing the squares when we are actually factoring the trinomial? Why don't we just factor it? Now we apply completing the squares if the given trinomial is not factorable. Okay, so if you cannot factor it, then we are going to use completing the squares. Okay, so we are completing the squares. We are making the trinomial a perfect square trinomial, so we can solve it, we can factor it, and then we can solve it. Okay, so let us try to apply the given the following steps to solve this. Now I have here an example, so we will just fill in the blanks as we follow the following steps. Okay, so let's have the first step. Divide all terms by a. Why do we need to divide all terms by a? Because we have to make sure that the value of a is 1. What do I mean by that? We remember y is equal to ax squared, or the standard form. Let's make it an equation. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay, so this is your a, b, and c. If you will remember, that is the standard form. Now, when you're applying completing the square, make sure that the value of your a here is 1. Okay, now if it's not equal to 1, you have to divide all terms by the value of your a so that it becomes 1. Okay, now let us look at our example here. X squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0. As you can see, the value of your a here is already 1. So since it's already 1, we don't need to divide all terms by the value of a because it's already equal to 1. So step number 1 is already checked. Number 2, move the number term to the right side of the equation. So what is the number term here? The number term here is negative 24. When you say negative term, I mean number term that is your constant term. That is a term without the variable. So in this case, your number term is negative 24. Now what we will do for step number 2 is to move the number term to the right side of the equation. So we want to move this on the right side of the equation. Now to move that, all we have to do is to add both sides by 24, right? So this becomes 0, and 0 plus 24 is 24. See? So we have already moved 24 on the right side. So you can do this, you can add both sides or subtract both sides by the given value of c, or you can just simply move it on the right side, but make sure that you change the sign. So if it's negative, make it a positive. If it's a positive, make it a negative. Okay, so we've already moved the constant term or the number term on the right side, so we've done already the second step. Let's have the third step. Complete the square of the left side of the equation and balance this by adding the same value on the right side of the equation. So what is that? We are going to complete the left side by making it a perfect square trinomial. So how do we do that? To do this, you have to get the value of your b. So we want to put something here, right? We want to put something here. So the number that we're going to put here is from the value of your b. Okay, so let's do that here. This is your step number 3. That will be b over 2 square. Okay, so to get the value here, so this is the formula that you need to do to get the number here to make it a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so what is our b? Your b is 2, so this is 2 over 2 square. 2 over 2 is 1 square. 1 square is 1, right? So this is 1. Okay, so that's how you do it. Now what about the right side? So we know that this is already 24. Now if you add 1 on the left side, you also have to add 1 on the right side. Okay, so that becomes 24 plus 1. Whatever you do on the left side, you also do that on the right side. So if you add 1 here, you also add 1 there. 24 is the one that we did on the second step, right? So third step is okay now. So how do we factor x squared plus 2x plus 1? This is a perfect square trinomial, right? So this is x plus 1 times x plus 1, because x times x is x squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, right? Or you can rewrite this as x plus 1 square. And what about the right side? 24 plus 1 is 25, right? Let's have the fourth step. Okay, the fourth step is factor the left side. We've already factored it, this one, right? And this is the factor. Let's go to the fifth step. Take the square root of both sides of the equation. We want to eliminate the exponent here. Remember, by getting the square root, we want to eliminate the exponent 2. Since you have parentheses here, you have to get the square root of both expressions, of all the expressions. If you do that on the left side, you also do that on the right side. Okay, so you can cancel this now. What's left on the left side is x plus 1, right? And you also get the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is plus minus 5. Okay, if you don't know how to get the square, just use the calculator and just add plus minus for square root. Okay, now x plus 1 equals plus minus 5. Since you have two values for 5 here, one positive and one negative, you have to split that. Okay, so you have to make two equations for positive 5 and negative 5. So x plus 1 is equal to positive 5 and x plus 1 equals to negative 5, right? And then we are going to solve for x. Let's do that on our first equation. So subtract both sides by 1. So this becomes 0. So x is equal to 4. 5 minus 1 is 4. Now let's have the other one. Subtract both sides by 1. Cancel this. You have x equals to, this is 1, sorry, negative 6. So the roots are negative 6, 4. Okay, so that's how we use completing the squares to solve for the given function or given equation, quadratic equation. Let's have another one. Okay, let's have number 2. 2x squared minus 16x plus 30 equals 0. So here, the same thing, we have to apply the following steps to solve for the quadratic equation by completing the square. The first step is divide all terms by a, because we want to make sure that the value of your a is 1. So in this case, your a is 2. So we don't want that. We want it equal to 1. So what I will do is I will divide all terms by 2. So this becomes 1. Because 2 divided by 2 is 1, right? So that is x squared minus 8x plus 15 equals 0. Right? So that is step 1. Step 2, move the number term to the right side of the equation. So we want to move plus 15 on the right side. To do that, you have to subtract both sides by 15. So this becomes 0. So 8x squared minus 8x equals to 0 minus 15 is negative 15. Okay, and then after that, we are going to apply a third step, complete the square of both of the left side of the equation, and then you have to balance this by adding the same value on the right side of the equation. So we have to make this a perfect square trinomial. Okay, to do that, we are going to get the value of your b. So again, let's put here, that is b over 2 square. Your b is negative 8 over 2. Negative 8 over 2 is negative 4 square, that is positive 16. Because negative times negative is still positive. So this is 16, right? Now remember, you have negative 15 here. Now if you add 16 on the left side, you will also add 16 here, right? That is step 3. Next is factor the left side. We are going to factor the perfect square trinomial here. So that is x times x. Alright, so let's do that. So that will be x. Okay, let's factor x squared. X times x, and 16 is 4 times 4. Now since this is negative, they will be both negative. So that's why you have x minus 4 square, right? And then negative 15 plus 16 is 1. Okay. Next step is take the square root of both sides of the equation. So we get the square root of both sides. Why are we doing that? So we can eliminate the exponent 2 here. So you have x minus 4 equals square root of 1 is plus minus 1. Right? Since you have two values for one positive and one negative, and then we have to split that by creating two equations, one for positive 1 and one for negative 1. Okay, and then we have to solve for x. To solve for x, we have to isolate x here, so we don't want negative 4 on the left side. So I will add both sides by 4. X is equal to 5. Same here, so plus 4 plus 4. X is equal to 3. Okay, so the solutions are 3, 5. Again, we are using completing the squares if the given trinomial is not factorable. Okay, or if it asks you to do that. Okay, so again, you are allowed to use Desmos. Okay, but for discussion purposes, so that and also so that you know how to apply, how to do this also in some other problems. Okay, to do this or to memorize the steps, I want you to do this on your own. Okay, you can go back and pause the video first. You watch it again, then try to do that on your own, then see if your answers are correct.